You are looking live. Hey, Trey, we are now live to the world. Literally, the whole world's hearing what you're saying right now. What do you mean, oh, good? Oh.
I've been eating.
What, Ben?
Mr. Franken, what do you get for McDonald's?
What's that?
What do you get for McDonald's?
Dollar menu.
Yeah?
Probably apple slices because it's the cheapest thing on the menu.
Not enough calories right now. I gotta look at the price, and then I look at how many calories I'm getting for that price. Well, isn't that why you eat? Isn't that why you eat, to get the calories and energy?
All you need is the 10-piece nugget, you know. It's $8.
It's so.
All right, can you hit the lights back there? Thanks, Sid or Drew. Hey, I know it's Friday and it's kind of Friday-ish, but we still got some work to do. Hey, we'll spend the first few minutes here, Riley, with that book put away, because your focus is on social studies now. And I don't do this as much as I used to, actually, but we're going to start from the beginning, go kind of quickly, but you're going to take these photographic pictures in your mind of all of the screens on here. So you got your notes, we talk about it, we go over it all the time, and then boom, you look at that and you're like, hey, look at all that I remember about Adolf Hitler. You're looking at that screen right now, Elise, and you're going, yeah, anti-Semitism, I kind of know what that means. I know he wrote Mein Kampf where? His house, a church, where was he? Thanks, Elise. In prison, right? And then you go to the next screen, you're like, yeah, this guy was so bad, we gave him 2 slides. And we like, you know what? He became kind of very popular in Germany, didn't he? We see him in hindsight as the most evil, the face of evil of the whole 20th century. They didn't see him like that in the 1930s. His rise to popularity. Of course, some people did if you were against them politically, but obviously most of Germany standing there lining up, hailing Hitler, that they were happy because he was doing things for Germany that were really good, right? The Führer, he's the man. And then who was his kind of mentor? Not really like personal mentor, but this guy came before Hitler. Hitler saw what he was doing in Italy. He says, that's the way you do it. That's, this whole idea over the last 100 years or so that spread from America to the rest of the world. This whole idea of Republican type government, democracy, it's not working. Look where it's got us. So they become these tyrants. Hitler had his stormtroopers. Mussolini had his black shirts. And remember, his overall goal was to restore the days of glory of the Roman Empire. And we learned, why is it called fascism? Because of the fasces of the old Roman guard. They used to walk around with that symbol of power. And now, to present day, do we have to deal with fascist elements in our society and around the world? Well, many people would say yes. Fascism is different than socialism or communism because in fascism, the government doesn't directly take over, like with Stalin, taking over all the land and making them collective farms. Fascism is the idea that you have this one powerful entity, central government, and they control, not take over, or they work in unison with the corporations to rule over the people. And it doesn't take a whole lot of deep thought to think about the times that we're living in right now. And you think about like who's controlling. You've got the central government in Washington. You've got huge social media and other media that are like controlling not only information you see on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, all of those places. Then you've got big tech places like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, and you find out all the people that they censor, and they're controlling like what information can get out. That's fascism. That's what fascists do. Take control. And do the corporations have to do it? Is the government making them do it? No. It's almost like the corporations, those big companies, are doing what the government wants to do. So it's kind of like they're working in unison, right? to get rid of, drown out, or silence voices that are against what their agenda is. It's kind of amazing when you think about it, that there's even a 50-50 split still. If you ever, at your young adult age, think about these things seriously, the fact that there's still a country where we're just about 50-50, when you think about all the control that the left side of the political side has through government, media, education, entertainment, it surrounds, just like in Chapel, all of that worldly stuff that just you're constantly bombarded with. How does that not affect you? Well, if you took a poll of Americans, like if you guys were able to vote, probably no Republicans would win, because young people haven't sorted through all these things, and you don't know all the repercussions to a society like adults do, right? So then you get to older people like us, those old timers still vote for those old ways. Well, guess what? Those old ways weren't all bad. So how did I get up on that? Oh, fascism, relating history to present day. And then that Tojo guy, what was his big thing? We're not looking at the screen. What's the big deal? How did Tojo get so powerful? Yeah.
Is the guy that made sure everybody paid homage to the emperor,
And then what did he have control of?
basically the whole country,
Because he had control of one key element in that
and
country.
military.
The military, the warrior mentality of the Japanese, even to the point of being a kamikaze, that not only is dying in service to the emperor and protecting the emperor a very honorable thing, in fact, something you almost strive to do, to the point of, hey, if it means I got to take my airplane and just go ahead and fly it right into that aircraft carrier or that, just lost a simple word, battleship, yeah, into that battleship, then I'll do it, because I'm doing it in service of my emperor God. Stalin, Man of Steel, the government control there is called communism. By the way, notice that when we look at Hitler's life, you can look back at Hitler's life and say, man, that guy, he had so much failure in his life that not that you excuse any of it. You're like, you try to figure out how's the guy end up like that, right? It's just like when we have criminals in America, you got a lot of people that want to find out what made that person like that. I mean, you want to punish them. You want to make sure that they don't hurt anybody else, but you want to study them, right? You want to find out, so that we can try to make sure no one else ever does those kind of crimes. Well, Hitler, you look back and he did have, his life wasn't that good. He was a failure. Maybe he suffered from little man syndrome too, because it wasn't, that kind of thing. But why did this guy and Mussolini grew up, his life wasn't that bad. His mom was a teacher. He was a teacher at one point. This guy was trained in the seminary. What happens to these people? Well, there's a hint. Some people, we all have trouble controlling our egos, but there's some people that are like, that's why it's called egomaniacal. To change your name to a name that literally means Man of Steel. There might have been their first clue that, hey, there's something not right about this guy. Then listen, there's a lot of dates here. You don't have to memorize a whole bunch of dates. I remember at some point, students used to complain that, we just got to memorize all these dates in history, and so then they threw out memorization of dates. Well, we don't totally throw them out. You're not going to have to remember that the Treaty of Munich was signed on September 30th, 1938. But what will be on the test is September 1st, 1939. That's a very big date of demarcation. That is the beginning of World War II, right? Future dates like September 3rd, you don't even have to know. You have to know September 1st, but the other things are just to put things in order. Like you don't have to know the exact dates that Hitler took Austria, Hitler took Czechoslovakia, Hitler took Holland. You don't have to know all the exact dates, but you should know the sequence, right? Without looking at the screen. Germany's expansion first happened where? By taking in Austria. Notice I said taking in, not taking over, right? They annexed Austria. It was so easy. Hey, Austria, would you like to be part of Greater Germany? Well, sure. Why, sure, Der Führer. We are very sympathetic to the Nazi cause, the leaders of Austria, so they just annex them. And then Hitler says, you know what? The Austrian people are Germanic-speaking people. They're like us anyway. Okay. Hey, we lost this land that you now call Czechoslovakia, the Sudetenland, mostly German people. It should be German land. I mean, come on. Okay. And then he ends up taking all of Czechoslovakia, and they say, okay, enough of this. Well, then he just ignores them completely, signs an agreement with Russia, and takes over Poland. And all of these other places. Oh, and then you should know the leaders of all the countries, right? The least known, if you were to ask the man on the street, if you went out randomly sometime today and you asked 100,000 Americans, who was the leader of France at the beginning of World War II? Out of 100,000 Americans, how many, take a guess, how many probably know who it was?
100.
I don't think.
10%.
I don't know.
20.
20 people? I don't even know. Oh, honestly, I don't even know that many. Probably. I mean, out of 100,000, you'd probably run into a history professor. But not very well known, is he? And why would he be? I mean, what was it? How many days? Just take over France? Not a whole lot of leadership there. A whole lot more would know this guy, right? Elise will never forget this guy. Jake Walker, I mean, this guy is so deep in his head, he'll never forget Winston Churchill. Did you know that's who that was, Jake?
No.
Jake, you should know who that is. He's already mastered your.
Wait, then here's bro next to him.
This is FDR.
Then here's the dude over there.
Everybody know who this guy is? That's Truman, who we'll get to at the end. FDR, the president that got elected 4 times, was president through the Depression and through World War II, almost to the end. He's the, one of the most famous. I mean, unfortunately, I've seen shows where they go out on the street and ask questions such as, like, "Hey, college students, who's FDR?" I don't know. What a blessing you guys have to say these things. This guy is the one that was tasked with, do I continue to fight in Japan or use this incredible weapon that could end it right now? What a horrible choice. So those early German victories, don't forget the phony war. Hey, what's going on here? Then the Battle of Britain, significance of that. Germany's first defeat, the leader Churchill, being such a leader to unify Great Britain, to dig in, never surrender, never give up. Let's apply history to present day. There's someone right now in the last 2 weeks that is being propped up on the world stage as a leader that is resisting a powerful country trying to take over his country. At least enough news to know that there's a that is being very bold, that is staying in the capital, Kiev, of Ukraine, even though we, the allies, NATO, have offered him an escort out of there because Putin, the president of Russia, would probably like to see him dead yesterday. Anyway, Zelensky, very good. And he goes on social media. He says, no, I'm not leaving. I'm staying here. He dresses in battle fatigue. We are not giving up. There's Ukraine, really, realistically, fighting themselves against Russia has no chance. Russia's like the Navy's second largest army in the world, and technologically, America, but they're a force, right? Ukraine, they don't have much chance, but they're not giving up. Churchill led the Brits to never. Ultimate problem there, the winter, brutal winter. of 1941 in Russia stops Germany in their tracks, and then America enters the war via Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor. And then the war for America begins in the Philippines. And the Bataan Death March. Hopefully Nicole will never, or sorry, Noel will never forget the Bataan Death March, not because she's going to harbor feelings, just because, again, history. We never want something like that to happen again. So world leaders after World War II, they regularly meet. There's a city and a country in the middle of Europe where world leaders meet to make rules for war. Yeah, Switzerland. You know the name of the city? Anybody know the name of the city in Switzerland where world leaders meet? And so then the rules for war are named Blank Convention. Anyone? There's an N in the middle of it.
B.
It's a familiar name to some of you because there's an institution about half hour from here, 40 minutes. Yeah. Geneva, the Geneva Convention. That's where world leaders get together and they say, hey, war is sometimes inevitable, unfortunately, in this fallen world, but here's the rules. You can't do this, you can't do that. And we got to make sure that never happens again. So there has to be rules. If you take people prisoner, you got to treat them like human beings. You know, the whole point to taking a prisoner of war is to have that leverage as you're negotiating with the other side for hopefully some terms of peace. The whole point to taking a prisoner of war isn't to just be brutal and inhumane and treat people like animals, right? Kind of crazy. What happens if people don't follow the rules? And that's kind of what America's up against in most of the West. Just listening to someone talk about this yesterday. I mean, when we fight the war on terror, the terrorists don't care. They don't care about no Geneva Convention. They don't care about cutting people's heads off and torturing them. We have to fight by our moral code. Our moral code doesn't allow us to go into a city and just indiscriminately bomb and say, hey, we're bombing your country. When we went to the war in Iraq, our soldiers had to go door to door with the threat of who knows what's behind the door of that house. Are those people part of the terrorist ring? Are they going to get blown up? And this happened a lot, right? Or they're just going down the street and they get blown up in their vehicle, because we're not going in there just bombing your country. We're going in trying to convince the people of the country to change their ways, one family at a time, door by door, to find out who the bad guys are and not hurt the good people, right? Putin, he's starting to show signs that he doesn't care either. He's bombing things that aren't military strategy. So, yeah. History, present day. Battle of Midway, big deal. It's the turning point of the war in the Pacific. We got all the way through this yesterday, right? The Desert Fox, Erwin Rommel, definitely a name you got to know. One of the most famous military leaders in world history. One of the top commanders for the Germans. Thankfully, he eventually loses. Eisenhower rises up through the ranks after he defeats, with the help of Montgomery in Africa. He eventually becomes, is that up there? Where's the Supreme? Is that the next one? Oh yeah, D-Day. So Eisenhower becomes the supreme commander of all Allied forces. And we stopped here, didn't we? D-Day. That's a date. Oh, another date you got to know. You got to know September 1st, 1939. You got to know December 6th, 1944. You got to know December 7th, 1941. Those are dates you definitely have to know. We watched this first video, right? But I don't know if we watched this one. Classes are in different places. Yes or no?
that day.
Does that voice sound familiar to anyone? Did anybody ever hear that man's voice before? Whose voice do you think that is? Yes! Who said that? Let's go.
No, she's just got the top.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's at the top. I didn't know it was up there.
I didn't see it on screen.
By the way, we commemorate June 6, 1944 every year. This, I think, was one of the special, you know how we make it more special if it's like 50 or 75 or if it's an even, round number. What's significance of that other than it's a round number? I don't know. But this is just to add to your remembrance. Why do we make such a big deal about D-Day? It's not just notes you're taking on a page. So we showed you yesterday the actual footage of what the men had to do, right? And we put the statistics up to say, wow, a lot of people died to take France back. What's that have to do with my life? Why should I feel so incredibly blessed that I live in a place called America where so many young men, some of them were drafted, but many of them volunteered to go and sacrifice their very lives so that I could be sitting here and have the audacity to complain that, oh, I gotta go to school today on Friday. Anyway, no one communicates, not even Churchill, better than this guy.
Mark that day in history when the Allied armies joined in battle to reclaim this continent to liberty. For 4 long years, much of Europe had been under a terrible shadow. Free nations had fallen. Jews cried out in the camps. Millions cried out for liberation. Europe was enslaved and the world prayed for its rescue. Here in Normandy, the rescue began. Here the Allies stood and fought against tyranny in a giant undertaking unparalleled in human history. We stand on a lonely, windswept point on the northern shore of France. The air is soft, but 40 years ago at this moment, the air was dense with smoke and the cries of men, and the air was filled with the crack of rifle fire and the roar of cannon. At dawn on the morning of the 6th of June, 1944, 225 Rangers jumped off the British landing craft and ran to the bottom of these cliffs. Their mission was one of the most difficult and daring of the invasion, to climb these sheer and desolate cliffs and take out the enemy guns. The Allies had been told that some of the mightiest of these guns were here, and they would be trained on the beaches to stop the Allied advance. The Rangers looked up and saw the enemy soldiers, the edge of the cliffs, shooting down at them with machine guns and throwing grenades. And the American Rangers began to climb. They shot rope ladders over the face of these cliffs and began to pull themselves up. When one Ranger fell, another would take his place. When one rope was cut, a Ranger would grab another and begin his climb again. They climbed, shot back, and held their footing. Soon, one by one, the Rangers pulled themselves over the top, and in seizing the firm land at the top of these cliffs, they began to seize back the continent of Europe. We're bound today by what bound us 40 years ago, the same loyalties, traditions, and beliefs. We're bound by reality. Here in this place, where the West held together, let us make a vow to our dead. Let us show them by our actions that we understand what they died for. Let our actions say to them the words for which Matthew Ridgway listened. I will not fail thee nor forsake thee. Strengthened by their courage, heartened by their value, and born with their memory, let us continue to stand for the ideals for which they lived and died. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Always, every chance you get, sneak in Ronald Reagan. Normandy, northern, right across the English Channel.
What?
Northwestern
Is it a
France.
country?
It's the area of France called Normandy. It would go all the way back in world history to William William the Conqueror. Anyway, so established that part of France called Normandy, and then there was 60-mile stretch of beaches there that we landed on to take over France. And it couldn't have happened without those initial guys. And I think I told you yesterday, somebody ran the numbers. If you take all the German gunners and all their ammunition, and you put those original, he said 225, because then there's waves coming after them, right? Their chances of survival were 1 in 4. Like, how you got? Sadly, it was only half of them that did make it, but that's twice as many as their mathematics said would happen. Again, another reason to study history is not to just learn from the past and not repeat the same mistakes, but sometimes it's hopefully sobering to you to think, how do I have this life? There are people that sacrifice their very lives and then think what their family sacrificed so you could have this life. Battle of the Bulge. One of the most famous. Didn't we just talk about this? Battles in history. The Allies, by the end of 1944, after that June invasion through August of D-Day, many of the Allied forces were feeling pretty good. We are making our way through France. Hitler is being backed into a corner because you got the Russians that have turned the tide in the East as well. So the days of Hitler's occupation of Europe seemingly are coming to an end. And there are some people in the Allied camp are thinking, hey, imagine we're home by Christmas maybe. At the end of 1944. We're having such success. But Hitler devises a plan for his one, he didn't think it at the time, but we know now, his last desperate attempt. And his idea is that he's going to divide the Allied forces. And he picks what he thinks is the weakest area in their forces. And he's going to create this divide, or you've got allies all in this area from Belgium down into France. And he's going to attack and create a division to split them apart and create a bulge in the middle of their forces from Belgium down into France. So that's why it's called the Battle of the Bulge. It's not like Normandy is a particular place and Pearl Harbor is a particular place. The Battle of the Bulge is named after the idea that through this whole area from Belgium down into France, Hitler's trying to create this division. So you got Allied forces, and in the middle you got this group of German forces that are cutting off communication. Does that make sense? Causing disarray among the Allies, and he found the weakest point to do that. So give you an idea. Here's Belgium. This is the Ardennes Forest. Luxembourg right here. And this blue line indicating where Hitler made his attempt to divide Allied forces. Divide and, how's the phrase go? Divide and conquer. So this happens in December 1944. Does anybody know when the war ends in Europe? We're going to get there early next week. Again, I usually am overzealous and with timing. It's been up there since yesterday. The test is going to be next Wednesday. Might as well change it now but it's probably going to be Thursday. We're hoping to finish at least by the beginning of class Tuesday, get the crossword puzzle, do the review on Wednesday, test on Thursday of next week. And the longest chapter of U.S. history will be in the books. Questions, comments? Almost 70 degrees the next 2 days. Woo!